Welcome to the Counter Narrative Podcast, a show designed to change the way we talk and think about education. I'm Charles Williams, and together we'll explore untold stories, bold ideas, and innovative approaches that transform our schools and communities. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Counter Narrative Podcast. As always, thank you so much for joining me in this space, whether you are listening or you are watching. Thank you so much for joining. Now, if this is your first time, welcome to the space. Feel free to check out this episode. And if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, go and check out all of the other episodes. We are well into the 200s at this point. And I'm very excited to bring someone on who we have shared space, but not like actually shared space. We've been in the same circles. We've been in the same vicinity of one another. So very excited that we get to connect. A colleague of mine doing some fantastic work, really in the area of special education. And I love this idea of focusing on progress and being part of being better. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, yeah, that is such an amazing message, and I want to learn more. I cannot wait to dive in. So tonight on the show, I have the one and the only Dr. Amy Mathews-Perez. How are you, Amy?
Well, I am great, and thank you. What a wonderful introduction. I hope there's no more Dr. Amy Matthews-Perez out there, because if there are, I'm evidently number one. So thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here. Like you've said, we've connected virtually through social media, but I'm really excited to have the opportunity to visit with you in person through social media.
Yeah, it's always nice when we're able to like finally connect. It's not just a little thumbnail on a screen somewhere, like to sit down and have this conversation. So, the next step is obviously connecting in real life, right? So
I'm in.
So Amy, it's always the best part. Like, oh, this is and then you connect, you have a great time. But why don't you talk a little bit about who you are, share your story with those who are listening. Who is the one and only, truly and honestly, Dr. Amy Mathews-Perez?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I am now in my 34th year of public education. I knew I was going to work in special education when I was in 5th grade. So there's a long story there, maybe another podcast, but I'll give you the snapshot version. I had a very good friend named Barbara in 5th grade. She had a brain tumor, passed away, very sad time. But that's when it really lit that fire in my heart to where this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to not take care of people with, very specific or special needs, but I'm there to empower them, to make them feel and remind them that they're a wonderful person, no matter what their circumstances are. Maybe facilitate that from other people to help, my friend Barbara. But that's when I knew I was going to work in education. I didn't know what special education was when I was in 5th grade, because that was 5,000 years ago. But did that, graduated, yada, 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 went to college. My senior year in college, I was going to school to be a teacher. My senior year, I thought, oh my gosh, no, I'm going to be a speech pathologist, and all my talking is going to be purposeful. So that was exciting. So I called my parents and said, hey, I'm changing my major. And they were like, that's great. You can do whatever you want as soon as you graduate and get a job. I was like, oh, okay, that's wise. That's wise parenting. So I graduated, started teaching junior high. Don't be jealous. Walked in January, mid-year, taught PE, right? Wore a dress and heels, taught PE that day as a sub. I had no idea. 2 days later, they called and I started teaching theater and speech in junior high, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So that was fabulous. Did that. Then was going to grad school, became a speech pathologist, worked in the same district. Now, this is the district where I went to school. So I'm working with people that I know and that I went to school with and that taught me. So we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, served as a speech path on multiple campuses. Then I was the lead speech path, and then I was a special ed specialist. I know that sounds funny, but I was in charge of anything that had therapy in it for the entire district. Met my husband. I call him my Prince Charming, and moved to South Texas, Corpus Christi. worked at a county alternative school. That's right. That's right. A county alternative school for 1 year as a education coordinator, and had a great time. I got to work with all the districts and coordinate all the special services. I really had a good time. Then got back into the public schools as a speech pathologist. And an elementary principal tapped me on my shoulder and said, "Do you have your mid management?" I mean, now I'm showing you how old I am, right? Because nowadays it's the principalship, I think. But anyway, I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And so I became his assistant principal. Then the special ed director job in that district down south came open, and I applied for that and got that. And I was a special ed director there. Then I moved to a different district, was a special ed director there for 9 years. And then I remembered how selfishly fulfilling being assistant principal was, because you get that immediate gratification, right, of all the kids and the noise and the fun. So I said, you know what? I think I want to be a principal. I think I'm going to end my career, even though I was far from the end, as a principal. So I applied for a principal job, didn't get it, cried, thought the world was over, continued to be a special ed director, applied for another principal job here at home near Waco to be near my parents, and got that job. Super excited. Came back to Waco, which is where I'm born and raised. Was a principal at the best school ever for 5 years. Loved it. Pre-K through 5th grade. It was a lottery campus, and it was a fine arts campus. So it's everything that my heart loves rolled into one. And then a special ed director job came open, and I will tell you, I spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of reflection, really, really thinking about, okay, am I going to do what everyone expects me to do, which is really that's not me at all. Or am I going to really be brave and chase my passion and do what fulfills me? So I left the principalship, and here I am, director of special programs in my 6th year in my current district. And you just told me my journey, and that's a long journey. So, but that's it.
It is a long journey, but it is a great journey, and it's exciting to see, the weaving and how you ended up in different places. And I'm sure that all of those experiences throughout a myriad of different spaces, right, has really helped to shape who you are and the work that you're doing today. And so had you taken maybe a traditional path, you wouldn't have had all of those opportunities. And so maybe you would not be the educator you are today. So great journey. Thank you so much for sharing with me. And thank you for sticking around for 34 years.
Yes. Well, it's my pleasure. It's what I do. It's what I love to do. And all the while, what I did mention, all the while for 26 of those years, I was in college because I love to learn. So I got my superintendency certification. I became a diagnostician, worked as a diagnostician in another district before I became the special ed director, because I tried to hit the high points at the beginning of my journey, and then got my beginning version of my journey. Then I got my doctorate in educational leadership also. So it is my 34th year, but you will be the first to know verbally I am retiring this June, if you can believe that.
Oh, wow. Well,
What?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I won't tell anybody. They'll have to wait and watch the show.
Well, I've put it out there, but not everybody reads everything, right, that goes out there. But and I've had a lot of people ask me, why are you retiring? You're so young, which I love that part. I'm not really that young, but when you have passion that bleeds beyond your job, which I do. I have my own LLC, and I have just a really deep-rooted passion to put more energy and focus towards that. And I believe it's going to impact even a larger audience than my current role does. There comes a time where you have to make that call. So my husband is also retiring. So we're just going to take the next step, and it's going to be awesome.
It's a beautiful thing, taking that journey together. I met my wife in education. We were co-teachers. And so when I tell everybody, when they say treat it like a marriage, we take it a little too seriously. But, it's a beautiful thing that you're going to take this leap together. So I'm curious. I really, thinking about all of the paths you've taken, all the experiences, I'm really excited to hear about what you want to talk about tonight. What's on your mind? What's on your heart? What do you want to dive into?
Well, there's a lot, as you can imagine, based on my experience, and I have a hard time narrowing things down, but I think couple of things. One, I am a firm believer in progress over perfection. I know that's very trendy. I know that's something people say, But I truly believe that if you focus on the progress, the final product will occur naturally. And I'll give you an example. So where I am now, I have a very small team of 11 of the most fabulous people working in our program. And instead of celebrating perfection, what did you do this month? Because we meet every month. What did you accomplish this month? Things like that. I made some posters. I'm not saying they're pretty because they're handmade, but it is what it is. It's the thought, right? I made 3 posters. One of them says, learn something new, and learned is in block letters. The other one says, accomplished a goal. Accomplished is in block letters. And I always forget what the third one says. Did something hard, learned something new, and accomplished a goal. So what we do every month is we take those little colored dots that you might see at garage sales, and they don't put their name on it, their initials. They don't tell me what it is. They just put the dots in the block letters. So we can see over time how much progress we're making. So at the end of last year, I would say those letters were about 75% full. So we just kept them up this year, and we're using different colored dots, the neon dots. And so it's really nice to see them celebrate that they did accomplish a goal. They did do something hard. They did learn something new without having to divulge all the details. But we're celebrating those little steps. And it's really surprising how energizing that visual is. So, but that's just one example, one way I like to celebrate progress, because when you make progress, you're getting better. And when you're getting better, you're a part of better. But you've got to have that inclination. You got to have that intention. Let me be more specific. You've got to have that intention to be better. So if you want to be a part of better, you have to do your part to be intentional about being better. Not perfect, just better. And I think another adage that's pretty popular is 1% better a day. Well, some people that might be ADHD, that's and not great at math yet, that's math, and I'm not going to subscribe to that. But if I can just do something better every day than I did yesterday, then I am a part of better. And I want everybody to be a part of better just by making progress, not by making perfection. Not by having everything be perfect. I don't like the pressure that perfection puts on people, because then I don't feel like they are inclined to be authentic. I think they become performers and, oh, you want me to do this and you want me to do that. No, I just want you to be authentically you. And let's figure out what we can do to support you and empower you to be better the next day in whatever area it is. It may be an area you're not good at. It might be an area you're great at. And the next day you're even greater. It all depends. It's all very individualized, which is where the special ed part comes in, right? But that's where my passion is. Let's be a part of better, and then let's make progress together.
Dr. Perez, I love that. It reminds me of something I used to say with my students. Oftentimes we would meet at the beginning of the day. We would all be together, and we had this mantra of good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best. Right. And I love this idea. We oftentimes talked about excellence, which was just that idea of doing something better. And I think you brought up a critical point of, in order to do that, right? We talk about it, but in order to truly be better, we have to embrace that idea of progress over perfection. And yeah, it might be a little cliche, but it's a truth that I heard you say that oftentimes when one expects perfection from someone, what you're getting is not an authentic demonstration of who they are, but instead this performative piece, because I'm trying to live up to this fake measure that you've created. And there's no way I'm ever going to get there. No one is ever going to be perfect in anything. Right. And so I think you brought up some great points that are salient with a lot of individuals, especially at the end of a school year where people are just dragging through it. Like, I just got to make it a few more weeks and we will be there. So I wonder, like you said it earlier, that progress over perfection is cliche. It's said often, and yet I think we have to have this conversation. So why do you think it's something that is said so often and yet not really incorporated into our lives, not something that we really lean into?
Because perfection is subjective. So what I think is perfect and what you think is perfect, I'm a betting woman. I do like to gamble. I bet it's not the same thing. So that's the other level of pressure when you say, I want to do that perfectly. Was that by your standard or someone
Mm.
else's, a specific someone else's standard or society standard? Perfection is subjective. So that's the first point. But in my opinion, more importantly, in order to recognize that you need to improve, you have to be authentic and know where your strengths and weaknesses are. And you've got to have trust with people to be able to say, you know what? Technology is not really my thing yet, right? We got to have that growth mindset. But guess what? I set up everything for this podcast by myself this time. I mean, you don't want to see it from this side, but it's working, right? I did not have to call anybody and ask or get any answers to any of my questions. I figured it out myself. So is it perfect? No, but is it doing what it needs to do? Absolutely. So I think better for some people implies imperfection, lot to learn, which, people tend to oscillate to the extremes, right? Which means you're no good at all. So those would be my two responses to your question.
Oh, I love it. And you're right. I think a lot of times people see like what's on screen, but if you were to do a backup shot of most of our setups and myself, I'm sure yours, other podcasters, it is a mess. There are wires everywhere. There are lights and weird, like it is not a pretty sight. What you see is pretty, right? It's almost like when if you're ever doing a stitching, like it looks so
Mhm.
beautiful on the front, but if you turn that bad boy around, you're like, what is this nonsense? And
I
so I
love
love
that
that idea that you're
example.
just right. It's a perfect
Yeah,
example of like what you don't see, and I
right.
I really appreciate you talking about somebody else's definition, right? Trying to live up to a standard that somebody else has created and trying to meet that mark and that the pressure that puts on you. And so I'm curious as we're thinking about this in our own spaces, can you
Mhm.
share a little bit about how you've seen maybe a great educator, maybe a great student who, as you referenced earlier, maybe thought less of themselves because they weren't not meeting a metric or a benchmark that somebody else put on them, maybe somebody who struggled through something. And I'm sure we both have lots of stories, and I'm just wondering if you could tap into one of those.
I could easily. I have a plethora, that's a grown up word, to choose from. But what I would rather give you, if you'd be okay with that, is an example of an adult who thought they knew what they wanted, but then when we broke it down,
Mhm.
they realized that wasn't what they
Yeah.
wanted at all because of what they thought what they wanted was. So I'll give you an example. I worked in a district where one of the staff had applied for the position that I applied for. I got the position, visited with that staff member, and that staff member said, I wanted your job. I said, I realize that. And they're like, oh, you do? I said, yes. And if that's the job you want, I want to help you get it. I mean, not this job, because I have this job, but this role in another district, I'm here to support you 100%. And they were flabbergasted. They were flabbergasted that I was willing to help them achieve a goal. But that's, again, another podcast. So we had a conversation. This person got an interview for the same role in another district. And I said, okay, now what? Do you want to do role play? Do you want to what do you have questions about? Have you looked at the data? On and on and on and on. They asked me about budget, and I was like, yeah, I might not be the best reference for that. But, I'll give you my best. Turns out that person didn't get the position. They were upset. We processed it. A couple months later, they got another interview, same position in a different district. Applied, didn't get the position. Anyway, school year passed, came to the end of the school year. We're doing the end of year evaluation. And I said, okay, so if this is the role you want, let's set your goals for next year to build in some, things that are specific for the role of director of special education or director of special programs. And that person said, no, I don't want to. And I was like, what happened? This is what we've been working toward all year, and on and on and on. And this person said, I've seen what you do, and that's not what I want to do. So do you see how that's a
Hmm.
flip example of what you asked me for? But if I had had that relationship with that person, they would have kept trying and trying and trying because they thought a role, director of special programs or director of special ed, was something that they thought it was. But when they saw it done the way I did it, I'm not saying it's the best or anything like that. It's effective. I believe it's effective. They said they didn't want to do that. So they were authentic enough to realize to give up what their image was of the role and accept the reality and realize that's not where their strengths lie and that's not what they want to do. So it was a big deal, and that person is successful in another district in the same role they were in my district, and we still keep in touch. I will help any way that I can. So it's just important to me that people be authentic and be willing to say, these are my strengths, but these are things I struggle with. These are things I want to get better with. Who can I find that can help me do that? That's a part of being better, is of course having that circle of trust, that circle of friends. But more important than any of that is the bravery of learning yourself and being okay with not being perfect, not meeting everybody else's standard, and things like that. And that's really hard for a lot of people. And I understand that, but I want to empower people to do that, because the way you are is the way you were meant to be today. And then tomorrow you can be better in whatever area it is you want to get better in. And then when we're all being better, right, as individuals, better happens in the big picture.
One of the things that I was hearing from you just now was this idea of redefining perfection, right? Because I think the staff member that you were talking about, oh, it just zoomed in on me. I've got this new webcam, and every once in a while I'll move my hands, and I'm a hand talker, and it's like, shoo. So those of you watching, I do apologize that you can see every single pore in my face right now. But I will say this, and I'll work on it when you're having your piece here. But I think one of it is redefining what it means, right? When we're thinking about perfection, I think in her mind, the staff member's mind, the job that you had, the role that you had was the perfect job, right? And so when it was recognizing like, oh, wait, that does not necessarily align with what I believe, I had to redefine what that meant. And as you said, that then allowed me to reassess how I am personally showing up with that and saying, okay, I'm going to shift things a little bit here and go a different pathway and still be successful, still experience that same success. It's just in a different avenue. So I appreciate you sharing that story. And I'm glad you did, because what I had asked for wasn't that, but had you done we wouldn't have gone down this pathway. So thank you for sharing that story.
Of course, I share that story a lot because it's very important for me for other people to hear. Let me get this straight. And I'm not going to use my hands because I don't want you to zoom in on me. That it's okay to change your lane. I mean, I changed my lane my senior year of college, but it's okay to change the lane. But I also believe that this change wouldn't have happened had I not been very, very intentional in creating, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying intentional in creating the relationship where this person felt authentic enough to say, yeah, that's not what I want to do. I didn't realize there was more to the job than what I thought the job was. So, there will be people that are listening that will say, oh, it's the difference between leadership and management. And that could very well be true. There are definitely parts of that, because I believe we all lead differently. But regardless, she was able to come to that consensus on her own. I was able to support her, and she's happy and she's still making progress. She's still being better, I will assume, every single day.
I'm glad to hear that is working out for her, and kudos to you for that support. And you mentioned something earlier, and I want to tap into it, which is a perfect segue into this portion, is that you said you want to help people lean into this work. And so we've been talking about this idea of, progress over perfection. We were talking about how are you part of something better? And so I'm curious, what are some ways, if somebody's listening to this right now and saying, hey, I want to lean into this, I want to be part of better, I want to embrace this idea, this concept. Do you have any practical tips, ideas, strategies that they could implement right after they jump off of either watching or listening to this?
Absolutely. Now, there are a lot, but I'm just going to hit a couple highlights. Spend some time with yourself and be brave about what you figure out. Let go of what people expect of you, really kind of what you expect of yourself, to be perfectly honest. And just figure out what lights your fire, what makes you excited, what wakes you up at night, not the stress, not the worry. You know what I'm talking about. What is it that you think about that you can't stop thinking about because you're excited about it? So, and that takes a long time. That's not going to be a 20-minute and I'm not saying meditation, that takes a repeated reflection, repeated self-reflection, which sometimes that's hard for people. But honestly, I think the harder part is letting go what others expect. I'm the youngest of 6. I don't know if I mentioned that. Some call me the baby. I just say I just happen to be born last. It is what it is. But my siblings have always told me, Amy, we worry that you don't worry. And I say, why would I worry? What do I have to worry about until I have something to worry about? And they're like, yeah, but you don't even worry what people think. And I say, well, not to the point to where it's going to change who I am. I'm conscientious of it. I am a bit of a people pleaser. I think we all are to some degree, but I'm not going to change who I am in order to please another person or another entity or anything external. But again, I wasn't born that way. It took a lot of time, a lot of self-reflection. So that was a long answer. First, spend some quality time with yourself. Figure yourself out a little bit at a time and be okay with that. Be brave enough to be okay with that. That's the first thing. And that's going to take some time. And you deserve the time. That's what I would tell them. You deserve all the time that it takes. The second thing is find out what the for real is in the area that you're passionate about. So don't believe everything you read. Don't believe everything you see. Get to the nuts and bolts of the area that you're passionate about. Like special education is one of my areas of passion. And when I meet with parents, whether it's on the phone or in person, I'm very frank. I know what the law is. I know what the rules are. I'm not ugly about it. I know what the rights are. I'm just very straightforward and transparent. And believe it or not, 99.9% of the time, that creates for a great relationship, because then guess what? We get to focus on the student instead of the paperwork and the procedures. So know the nuts and bolts of whatever it is you think your passion is. And guess what? If you change your mind about your passion, that's okay too, because nobody has to know that. Or even if you have trusted friends you want to tell that to, that's okay. We evolve, we grow, we learn. Now, I happen to know in 5th grade what I was going to do when I grew up, wink, wink, and it just happened to work out. But there have been lots of things I've tried that didn't work out. Trust me, when I was getting my doctorate, I told my husband, I think when I finish, I really want to learn how to play the harmonica. I think it's easy to carry around. I thought it was going to be pretty easy to learn. And there are some songs that I really like that have the harmonica part. So I thought, well, I'll just learn the harmonica part. So because he loves me so much, he bought me 8 harmonicas. 8 harmonicas. Because he knows my passion runs deep. Do you know, on one harmonica, I learned to play 4 notes. And that's it. That's it. They're still sitting in, it's been 10 years and that passion came and went. So it's okay to change your mind. You got to dig into what's authentic, and you got to give yourself the time to do that. And you got to be brave enough to do
I
that.
I love the harmonica story. Then I started thinking, I was like, I wonder what song she would want to play the harmonica for.
I can tell you the 4 notes because I played them for like an hour, and my husband was like, I love you, but come on, you got to let it go. It's dun, 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 dun. So it's like if you go to church at all, you might hear, oh, when the saints, those are the only 4 notes I know how to play on one of the 8 harmonicas. So I'm just saying passions can change, and it's okay.
It's like, what are the saints do? What do they do? I need to know. No. But I think you brought up 2 great points, and people need to hear this, right? One, spending that time with yourself, as you pointed out, great points. I literally, as I mentioned to you a little earlier today, I was on a podcast with Frederick, and that was one of the things we talked about, is the power of the pause. Just pausing for a second. Stop wearing that badge of honor that's I'm busy. Like, pause for a moment, sit with yourself, and figure out who I am and how I'm showing up, and to stop worrying about what everybody else is thinking about. And, somebody told me not too long ago, at the end of the night, at the end of the day, when you're going to bed at night, like, those people, they're in their own bed sleeping. They're not worried about you. So, like, why are you worried about what they're thinking about you? Like, don't do that to yourself. And so I love that point. And then just even the honesty of saying, just because you were passionate about something doesn't mean that you always have to be passionate. right? Or that thing that you thought was necessary or that you should be passionate about, it's okay if you're not. It's okay to let go of things. It's okay
Absolutely.
to change course. So thank you for sharing
So
those.
you're welcome. And I'll give you another example. When I was getting my doctorate, and you start to pick your topic. I was going to save the world of autism when I talked about my dissertation. I had it all worked out. And so I was going to study something, I don't remember what it was, that didn't happen. And my very wise dissertation chair said, yeah, you can't study something that doesn't happen. You can't study why it doesn't happen. But it was in the realm of autism, and I was going to save the world. So then I just, threw my hands up. Well, now what am I going to do? Well, I paid attention. I reflected. So when I had been researching for autism, I would always get sidelined. I would always get sidelined by another topic. So I started paying attention. What were those topics? And then I'm going to be very, very, as I always am, authentic and transparent. I just stopped. I just stopped reading. And I thought, what is it you love to do? Now, you're going to be shocked by this answer. Are you ready? I love to
I'm ready.
talk. Shocker. I love to talk. So guess what my dissertation was about? It was about, in Texas, we call them ARD meetings. Everywhere else, they call them IEP meetings. It was about dissension at ARD meetings and how it's handled and how it could be handled and how things could be better, and on and on and on. 365 pages of my life. But again, another example about how I thought I was supposed to save the world of autism. And then I was just brave enough to say, no, I'm going to tap into what I love to do. And what do I love to think and talk about? And where do I see a need? And I just combined those. So I don't want our listeners to think the answer is going to come quick necessarily. It really takes, I'm not going to say trial and error, but you got to give your ideas some room to breathe. And then it's okay to change your mind. It's perfectly fine. And then if you have some people that can help you with that processing, I think that's also helpful. You don't have to have them, but it can be helpful. I'm working on a blog post right now called Everybody Needs a Hole Puncher and a Pauser. So when I was a principal, my assistant principal turns out was my hole puncher, because I'm the idea person. I have lots of ideas. I'm not saying they're good, but I have a lot of ideas. And she's the one that would ask the questions, right? She was the logical, practical one. So she would punch holes in my ideas, which was fine because it worked out better for the campus as a whole. I can't even imagine what it would have been like if we would have done all my ideas. And then my instructional specialist was the practical, and she's the implementor. And it took me, you're not going to believe this, it took me 3 years to find out she was my pauser. Let me tell you how I figured it out. After 3 years, and we met every week during the school year, it took me 3 years. Did I mention I'm ADHD? Sometimes I don't catch things. It took me 3 years. And so I would have an idea. Jen was my hole puncher. She would hole punch it. But if an idea made it through the hole puncher, it would go to Melissa, our instructional specialist. And we'd say, what do you think, Melissa? And Melissa would say, let me think about that. It took me 3 years to figure out that meant, no, that's not a good idea. So now we're all still friends and we laugh about it. And that's why I'm writing the blog about it. But had I not trusted them to punch holes in what I thought were glorious and perfect ideas, and then pause me. And so when I asked her later, I said, why would you say that? She said, because you're always going to come up with another idea and you'll never even remember that idea. So that's all I had to say. And you went right on. So she knew me well enough to know when to pause. So yeah, the pause button, I don't think it gets enough attention or credit. But if you don't have your own pause button, you can find somebody that can help you pause.
Man, I love. I thank you for your AP and your instructional coach, your instructional person. Like it's we definitely need those individuals in our lives. So if you're listening to this, figure out who your hole puncher is, who's your pauser. And this made me think about the pre-conversation we're having about all the projects we have in motion. Like all the things we're like, yeah, let's start the thing. This would make a great book. And I'm like 2 pages in and I'm just like, let me start another one. Like it as we're having these conversations, it's like, yeah, maybe I need a hole puncher to run those through. That way I don't have 20 drafts of things sitting in my drive that may or may never see the light of day. So I appreciate that idea.
Yeah, it's no problem. And like I said, she's still my hole puncher today. And she's not my pauser, but we still laugh about it. But here's the other thing. Not every idea has to be the best or the biggest idea. Give yourself grace, right? We're not trying to be perfect. And maybe it was a good idea for a couple of days, but then you changed lanes. That's okay. Write down the idea so you don't forget, because you may come back to it later. I've got an idea about 2 book series that's been brewing in my head for about 5 years. I'm a portion of the way through them, but then I get distracted, and then you think you're in the writing world when you have 8 different publishers tell you no, but then you're like, oh yeah, just wait. So I emailed a publisher today to say, I'm so sorry I haven't gotten back with you. I just had a knee replacement and I'm recovering, and now I'm back at work. So I got nothing. I got nothing on this project. I promise I'll get back to you with details when I do, but don't just don't just discredit your idea. Just let it, write it down, let it lie, let it breathe. And if it stirs a fire, lights a fire, stirs your passion, great. If not, just keep going. No judgment. What is that that's so popular now? I'm old, so I'm not going to get it
We
right.
listen
We
and
listen, we
don't
don't
judge.
judge. So we need to do that for ourselves. Listen and don't judge. Just let it be. That's how you discover your authenticity. That's where you're going to tap into your passion and what you're passionate about, regardless of what anybody else thinks. So it kind of transitions. You worry about what everybody thinks, and then you start to know yourself. And then eventually you're so passionate about it. It's not that you don't care, but you don't let what other people think get you off the path of your passion. And that just takes time, and give
Mm.
yourself the grace and the time to do that. And that's how you become a part of better, whether it's your better or our collective better. It all works together to be better. Hey, I made a rhyme. How about that? That
Look at that.
works.
Look at that. Well, listen, Amy, I just want to say, I want to say that this has been a great, great conversation. But before we jump into the final closing out pieces, I'm sure that there are individuals who are listening and they're like, hey, I need to connect. I want to learn more, especially since Amy is about to dive into this LLC, doing this work full time since we're retiring from the other side. I want to jump in line and connect. So how can individuals find you?
The best place to find me is on X at Dr. Grow to Know. Just like it sounds, DrGrowToknow, because I know I need to grow, and there's a lot of growing to do, and I know that. You can also go to my website, dramyperez.com, and find me there and connect with me there. I would love to connect. The more the better, because guess what? Then our better becomes bigger. So yes, let's connect. Let's do it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'll make sure that we include those in the show notes in case you're in a place right
Awesome.
now, like, in your car driving, where you cannot write those things down. They will be in the show notes. So, Amy, I just want to say thank you, obviously, for jumping on, for doing this episode, having this conversation. I'm glad that we finally got to connect. But also, thank you. Thank you for doing this work. I think it is fantastic. I think we need individuals like you, not only passionate about the work itself, but just really calling us to the table and giving us those hard, honest truths to remember. And so I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, I'm going to say you're welcome, of course, but it's interesting that you would say calling us to the table, because my LLC is Mesa, which is Spanish for table. So it's the learning table. So if you're really ready to do some learning, some hard, honest learning, whether it's about special education, whether it's about being motivated, empowered, whatever it is, then you need to come to Mesa and we'll do it together. But honestly, obviously, none of this would have happened if you hadn't had me on as a guest. So thank you for having me as a guest. I really appreciate it. But I wanted to tell you, I was really inspired by the thing you recently published. I'm going to call it a one pager. I'm sure it's got a more professional name than that. But wow, wow, I'm working on mine. I'll show you. It's a scribble. But look what you've done. Look what you've made happen. I don't know if you can see that. The lighting's pretty, but look what you've made happen. So thank you for that. So you are equally inspiring. So thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Well, in that vein, I would just say that I am happy to have been at the table with you, honored to share this
Thank you.
space with you. And so for all of you listening, all of you watching, as always, until next time.